A very good evening to all of you, and I'm delighted to welcome our special guest to the show. Uh, Without any further delay, let me start with the questions straight away. Uh, as businesses across the world are trying to navigate the pandemic, what is your mantra as a business leader to rebound faster?
First of all, thank you for having me here. This is such a fantastic forum, and this is such an incredible year. I don't think anybody expected sitting in January of 2020 to expect to see what we have seen through the course of this year, and it's really forced all of us to dig deep and to learn a lot about who we are as individuals and who we are as companies and what we can do to really make a difference. So, to that end, a lot of what we have done is built around two or three principles for me personally, Himanshu. One is show, don't tell. We have actually done very little talking and a lot of doing this year. The second one is this is a really tough time for humanity. So we are focused on staying really humble. And a lot of the conversation is about doing what we can do to help. And lastly, we have stayed very close to core, and which is strange for a technology and disruptive innovator like Uber to say, but we have stayed very close to our core in mobility, our core in technology, and our core in innovation. And that's helped us, I hope, to make a positive difference in society this year in many ways. And hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that over the next few minutes.
Okay, that's interesting. You focused more on work rather than talk, and this is a very nice mantra. But you've been through tough times, Pradeep. But as a business leader, how did you try to inspire transformative changes in the business?
Tough times, yeah, an understatement, Himanshu, I'd say. With the nature of the COVID issues that we have faced, transport, along with things like hospitality, has been amongst the most hit. In fact, there was a time early in April where pretty much everything was off the roads, and we have built back up from there. So tough times. I've never seen that over a 20 plus year career, and I've worked with such wonderful institutions in that time frame. This is nothing like I've ever seen before. So quite tough. But I do want to focus on these principles that I talked about and give you a few examples of what we did. The first one I thought that is the most important is the people who do work on the Uber platform are drivers. They've had the hardest time over the last few months. And in order to try and do the best we can, we launched the Uber Driver Care Fund. I'm quite proud of the efforts that we made, both contributing as Uber, but also crowdsourcing and going out to our riders to ask for contributions. And nearly 100,000 driver partners supported with the grant. Small thing, I'd say, in the broad situation that they face, but something that we've received a lot of positive gratitude for. The second thing that we have done is this idea of moving what matters. You'll remember, Himanshu, there was so much challenge with getting frontline workers to hospitals and to clinics and places where they needed to actually get to, but there was no transport, no public transport available to them at all, and people were quite scared to get out on the roads. We've invested in partnerships with the National Health Authority and a number of healthcare institutions around the country and delivered more than 280,000 free rides. That's what we know to do. We stayed close to our core in mobility, and we supported frontline workers. We innovated with partners such as Big Basket and Spencer's and Flipkart because we need to get stuff to people's homes because you couldn't get out. And we launched out of that a service that I think will become part of the core Uber promise and service offering in the next few years, which is delivery, which was something that we wouldn't do before. I think that's a good example. And lastly, a number of institutions were challenged communities, such as the older community, the blind, the people who needed food. We have partnered with unbelievable institutions like Robin Hood, as one example, with HelpAge India, to provide travel support and transportation to people who are trying to do the right thing for society. All of these, to me, comes from the core of this idea that we can operate in society only if we make a positive difference. And this was the time to test every company to whether they made a difference to the communities that they wanted to operate in.
Okay, so you've been a very responsible corporate citizen in the toughest time in our lifetimes, which is laudable. But things are changing. There's so many vaccines about to hit the market. So many economic indicators are doing well. And today, oil price has gone up about $50 for the first time since March. But what's the news within the Uber's business? How much has it recovered in the region so far?
I'd say a much better last month than the few months before that. Many green shoots of recovery. I'll give you a few examples. Our three-wheeler business in a city like Bombay is north of 150% of what it was pre-COVID, which means it's actually grown 50%. That same business in Delhi is more than what it was pre-COVID. Our two-wheeler business, which was one of the innovations that we launched last year, has had tremendous traction. All of this obviously is in the context of public transit ridership, both in India and most parts of the world, are down dramatically because people are scared to go out and use public transit. So we have seen some green shoots. There are some segments, Himanshu, that are challenged, still challenged. So employee commute, people are obviously not going to offices as much. So that's going to take a much longer time to recover. Airport trips, which is a big part of our business, that's obviously quite slow in its recovery. So it's a bit of a mixed picture. I do want to draw a contrast now that I get to see some of the recovery trends in other parts of the world, particularly in North Asia and Australia. There is hope in that communities will get back to normal, commute will get back to normal. Those businesses are 80, 90+% recovered now, which means that when the society does get COVID under control, natural human behavior is to want to socially interact, to be with others, and that will come back. So I can tell you with great degree of confidence based on what we have seen in some of the other countries that we expect the India recovery to be quite strong in the next few months, particularly as the vaccine hits the market, hopefully in Q1.
Okay, so you're already doing better than pre-COVID levels in some segments, and that is even before the pandemic has fully gone. So that sounds very promising. But what next? How do you plan to navigate through the impact of the pandemic on future of mobility? And let's try and be brief. I have so many questions in very limited time.
Quick question. So the short answer is this is forcing us to think about mobility in its full expanse. As you know, if you think about where India moves and how India moves across the world, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. Uber's historically been very focused on the big cities. So one is our expansion plans to 200 plus cities. We are right now in 90. That's going to be critical. Second, India doesn't move in air-conditioned cars. Indians move in autos, in bikes, on trains, in buses. And we hope to be able to bring a lot of those modes of transport onto our platform. Wouldn't it be nice if a consumer wants to take a metro ride, they can book it on an Uber, flash that and scan it at the metro entry point and take the trip? We can do that, and that technology is something that is under development. So you should expect to see us becoming a lot more expansive in bringing on many more new modes of transportation onto our platform here in the coming years.
Okay. But Pradeep, I know many people who are now going to buy a car because they don't trust, they are too cautious to take public transport. And once they buy a car, even after the pandemic, they're going to use it. Does that impact your business?
Yeah, what a great question to ask. This is a constant debate. Frankly, this is going to take a little bit of crystal ball glazing. So hopefully you'll allow me the time. So what we are seeing is when riders come back on the platform, they're actually taking as many rides as they were taking before, which means that their frequency of usage comes back quickly. But that comes when they actually see that they're safe, which means the bar on providing a safe transportation is very high. And it is very different from the pre-COVID era. I'll give you two examples of what we have done. We have put now 87,000 safety screens in a three-wheeler and 43,000 safety screens in cars. This is an innovation that did not exist before COVID, but we recognize that this is the need of the hour. It makes the driver feel safer. It makes the rider feel safer. We have implemented a no mask, no ride, which is leveraging the power of technology and the cameras we all have on our phones now to make sure that there is no risk that comes from exposure from not having worn a mask. That means you cannot take an Uber ride if you're not wearing a mask. And lastly, we have distributed large volumes, 3 million masks, more than 250,000 bottles of sanitizers, more than 200,000 bottles of disinfectants, so that every driver can clean the car and keep the surfaces that are most likely to cause transmission safe. So I'd say with great pride that we have really put our money where our mouth is and made dramatic investments to raise the quality of safety. I think everybody in the public transit system will need to do that, because I think we can agree, we have short memory sometimes in society, but if we have more and more cars coming out on the road, Imagine what happens when commute traffic starts to go back. We have all gotten used to much better road conditions, and I do hope that the magic of ride sharing can ward that off, and I really hope that that phenomenon is temporary.
Okay. So coming to yourself, as you take on the responsibility of leading the business in the APAC region, what are your priorities? Some of them you've already covered in the question so far, but yeah.
There are 3 or 4 important things, Himanshu, which are naturally related to growth, and that I already covered. We are very much in the mode of introducing new modes across the world, and particularly in Asia Pac, where personal vehicle ownership is amongst the lowest in the world, even in markets like Japan and Korea. And to do that, by the way, we are working much more closely with taxi services than we have ever worked in the past. So that's one innovation. But there are 2 or 3 other topics that I want to touch on. One is sustainability. This is very much a topic that has come to the top of everybody's minds as we have recovered through COVID. 2040 for every vehicle on our platform to be electric. By 2030 in large parts of Europe. And by 2025 in a city like London, which we'd say is setting the tone for many parts of the world. To that extent, we have just started onboarding electric rickshaws onto our platform. We have a partnership with a company called Lithium, where we are putting more than 1,000 electric vehicles on the Uber platform here, right here in India. We have partnerships with Sun Mobility, which is doing some of the more cutting edge work in 3-wheelers, Mahindra with their electric vehicles, etc. So sustainability is going to be a big priority for me personally. The third one, I did briefly touch on it, but safety and maintaining it. This is the one where you can do all kinds of strategy, but a rider on every ride needs to see it and needs to feel safe, and we need to amp up and keep our focus going on execution. And so you will see more and more focus and hopefully innovation in that space.
Okay. So Pradeep, India is a very unique country. It sets its own standards and tones and everything. But are there lessons which can be applied here from other markets in the APAC region?
Quite a few. I am quite thrilled to see how public transit is so integral to transport in cities like Japan, in Korea, and Taiwan, and how they have managed to actually flatten out private vehicle ownership. In fact, that has been in decline in many of those markets for a period of time. As I look at the infrastructure plans of the Indian government, and you see what we have built out as infrastructure in terms of metro systems around the country, it is quite shocking in a city like Delhi for us, the number of Uber trips that begin and end at a transit station has dramatically increased in the last 3 to 4 years, which means that this whole idea that public transit can be very well integrated with the Uber platform is a idea that I'm personally very excited about exploring much more at scale. As you know, there are such large public bus transit systems, whether that's in Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay, that can do, I think we will all agree, with an infusion of technology and making those services easy to avail. And I'm hoping that we will do a lot more in that space here in the next 5 years.
Okay. As better days unfold with vaccines, one of the concerns many potential customers or existing customers would have is your driver vaccinated? So would you want some priority access to that? An Uber driver is pretty essential. You began by taking healthcare people to hospitals. So
very, very valid question. In fact, this is something that I think has just hit the press in the last 24 hours, where Uber sent in the US letters to governors of many states suggesting that Uber drivers be given preference along with healthcare workers and other priority sector workers, just given the nature of their work and the risk that they carry on a day-to-day basis. So they were very much engaged with the Indian government to ask that frontline workers such as Uber drivers get preference. In addition, Himanshu, we are in the same spirit of having taken healthcare workers to work. We are also keen to partner with governments. As you can imagine, the vaccine rollout in a country like India is going to be complex, which means a lot of people, particularly the underprivileged, will need to go to vaccine centers that requires transportation. And we are likely to engage with the government in offering transport services and partner with them so that we can make the government's job easier and make it easier for our citizens to be able to get access to vaccines.
Okay. Within the time we have, my final question. You you've touched it earlier, is about Uber's push towards sustainable mobility for cleaner air and greener future. Now, as we grapple air pollution and rapid urbanization, we face this in Delhi. What are your plans for the region, and how do you plan to execute them?
So this is a bit personal for me because my son's born and raised in Gurgaon. He's 12 now and went through 6 hospitalizations in his first 2 years because of bad air. Oh. And so this is a deeply personal issue for us in the family. And part of the reason I joined Uber is because I fundamentally believe, like our Minister Gadkari has said many, many times, if you continue to add vehicles at the pace that we have added, and that continues to remain a status symbol, there is no space to put more vehicles. Delhi has already gotten more vehicles per capita on our roads than any other city in the world, which means the investments that we will make, globally, we are committing $800 million towards helping our drivers get access to electric vehicles. What's critical for a market like India is that we do need to bring the cost of vehicle ownership in line today with existing options. If a Maruti Dzire is available at 9 lakhs today in the market, we do need an equivalent vehicle that is an electric vehicle that is available at that cost. Second, we are working, and this is a critical task, to build out infrastructure so that charging points are available and the power required in the charging points is available. This is really the job of the government as well as the private sector, something that Uber can partner with. And lastly, we are very much making a commitment to continuously increase the quantity of vehicles on our platform that are electric. By the end of next year, between cars and electric rickshaws, we will have more than 3,000 vehicles that are 100% electric. And hopefully that signals real commitment as well as progress that is substantial versus where we are today, where that number of vehicles is less than 1,000.
Okay. By cost, you mean the initial cost, or you include the lower running cost of?
I think the initial cost, because the cost of fuel production for alternate fuel in India seems to be going down dramatically because of the innovation that we are seeing in that sector. But this is very much about the upfront cost.
Okay, that's very interesting. You shared some very good insights. We're delighted to know how responsible a corporate citizen you've been, and how you are, seeking to cooperate in the dissemination, this distribution of the vaccine. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Pradeep. My best wishes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you in a pretty tough time, but hopefully we are at the back end and there's real light at the end of the tunnel.